You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
Full 27 minutes after we were supposed to start recording this episode of the Show Before the Show podcast, my computer is functioning enough for us to do so. And it's with that great excitement that we welcome you into the latest edition of the official podcast of Minor League Baseball, along with Benjamin Hill and Sam Dykstra. My name is Tyler Mon. Guys, keep your fingers crossed this thing stays on. Hi, how are you?
Good, Tyler. You are coming to us apparently from a cave.
Yeah.
You have decided to record in complete darkness today, and I
Correct.
don't know why you have your video on.
Right, you are.
It's just like, we know you're here, we can hear you, but
I do.
we cannot really see you.
I do very much look like an old 1970s game show contestant where like you have to guess who I am or something. I have there's like a window behind me, and that's where all the lighting is, and you can't really see my face. That was the whole point today. I wanted to remain mysterious as much as possible.
Sure, that's what you go for every week, is just mysterious. Mysterious Mon is what
I try to stay out of the way. Obviously, I'm not really. I don't really suck the air out of all these rooms with all of my constant talking. Ben, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I'm coming to you guys live and direct from a hotel room in Biloxi, Mississippi, where I will finish up my road trip seeing the Shuckers tonight. As I've been talking with Sam off air, the weather here is not great, and the weather on this trip hasn't been great, but I've gotten all the games in so far. Yesterday, getting here from Pensacola was the worst drive I think I've ever done on any of these road trips, and those go back to 2010. Just heavy rains, thunderstorm, low visibility, flash flood alerts, tornado warnings, and I just didn't know what to do. I just kept driving because I kept thinking, like, is this the worst mistake I've ever made in my life? But there were other cars on the road, and hey, I made it. But man, it's been some pretty ugly weather here on the Gulf Coast and the Florida Panhandle.
Well, we are very happy that you are safe and sound in Biloxi, and we are going to kick off this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast talking about that very road trip. And if you are tuned into the podcast and have a question for Ben about the road trips, or you want to get in touch about something else regarding your love of minor league baseball, give us a shout. Podcast at MILB.com. You can find us all on social media as well, at Ben's Biz, at Sam Dykstra MILB, and at Tyler Mon. And we're going to kick this off today with some very cool news from the major league side of things, which ties into Ben's current road trip. And that awesome news, if you did not hear it earlier this week, we're actually recording kind of early this week on Tuesday, but by the time you hear this news will be out there into the public and generating a lot of excitement as it is already. Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama, which is the oldest professional ballpark in the United States, former home to the Negro League's Birmingham Black Barons, will play host to a major league regular season game on June 20th, 2024. So a year from the day that we are recording this, this could not be a cooler story. This is something that we've kind of talked about before on the podcast about, as MLB continues to explore these cool new avenues of playing internationally, playing at the Field of Dreams, playing the Little League Classic, would Rickwood Field be a venue for something like this? And it is going to be in 2024. Not only is that awesome, but Ben was actually just there. Ben swinging through Birmingham and getting a chance after checking out a Barons game to check out the former home of the Birmingham Black Barons, Rickwood Field, which of course for a long time played host to a minor league regular season series. With the Birmingham Barons taking part in that. But Ben, tell us about the sojourn through Birmingham so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Birmingham on the Thursday, seeing a game at the Barons' new home of Regents Field, and on this past Friday, I stopped by Rickwood Field, and it opened in 1910 and has the designation of America's oldest ballpark. It hosted the Birmingham Barons, the minor league team, mostly in the Southern Association and Southern League, From 1910 all the way through 1986, of course, as Tyler mentioned, it hosts the Birmingham Black Barons as well. And from 1996 through 2019, it was the home of the Rickwood Classic, where the Barons would return there once a year for a regular season game. I got to attend that in 2010, which was celebrating the centennial of Rickwood Field at the time. And one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of, that was one of my very early road trips. Harmon Killebrew was the guest of honor at that game because he had played at Rickwood Field as a member of the Chattanooga Lookouts. And that's just indicative of the names that have passed through Rickwood Field from 1910, all the way through 1986. Probably most notably Willie Mays in 1948. He was 17. He grew up outside of Birmingham, and he made his not his professional debut, because I think he had a few games with the Chattanooga Choo-Choos, but he had some of his first games ever as a professional with the Birmingham Black Barons at Rickwood Field and in the Negro Southern League. And now that Major League Baseball is recognizing Negro League statistics, that team will be part of his Major League record that he played for in 1948, 3 years prior to making his debut with the New York Giants. So much history there. And the timing worked out that, I was there just before they made this announcement. I mean, how amazing is it that a ballpark that opened in 1910 will host its first Major League game in 2024? And of course, it also means the return of the Barons, because 2 days prior to the Giants and the Cardinals playing in 2024, on June 18th, the Birmingham Barons will host the Montgomery Biscuits. So there will be a minor league component as well. And of course, that makes a lot of sense. The Rickwood Classic happening again in this new format. And really hope I can make it back out to Birmingham next year to attend it. Going to Rickwood Field last Friday, I mean, the ballpark is in remarkably good shape for a ballpark that opened in 1910. And there's an organization called Friends of Rickwood that deserves the lion's share of the credit for that. They have, over the years, very volunteer, community-driven effort, put in so much work to keep the ballpark in decent shape. But over the next year, obviously, to meet the standards of playing Major League Baseball, there's going to be a lot more improvements. So what's going to happen, and why this is so cool, is not just the game itself, but the investment into Rickwood Field that will ensure its viability for years to come. It's going to be in better shape in 2024 than arguably that it's ever been, going all the way back to 1910 in terms of what will be implemented there on the playing field and the infrastructure of the stadium. So it's just such a cool thing for a ballpark with that much history to get this new life, 114 years after it opened.
Yeah, Ben, and I want to go back to what you were talking about with that Rickwood Classic that you went to in 2010, because for a lot of people, I think this is the first time they're hearing about Rickwood, at least the general baseball populace. I mean, maybe they've heard about, Willie Mays' history or stuff like that, and they know about the Field of Dreams game or the Little League game that Tyler was talking about earlier. They know that there are special events in baseball. Here's one that I think the primary reason for this is education, right? Is to get people to know what Negro League teams we're playing in, what some of these stadiums are that are still in existence. But we're also coming from this from the point of view that there have been minor league games in this park before. So what do you remember from that 2010 game? You mentioned Harmon Killebrew being there. But in terms of how they incorporated some of the old timey aspects of it, some of the throwback nature, what was that like?
Yeah, they had live brass bands, and in addition to Harmon Killebrew, the players themselves, both the home Birmingham Barons and visiting Tennessee Smokies, wore uniforms from the 1910 era, not uniforms that were made in 1910, made out of wool and burlap or whatever it would have been, but period specific uniforms. Game day employees dressed in old timey, like straw hats and like red and white striped shirts, live brass bands playing outside the ballpark. So it was a really amazing event. And I remember being a little struck because it wasn't even sold out. In my mind at that time, and really still today, I was like, how does this event not just sell out every year and be a national event? And it was kind of, I think, for people who were paying attention, one of many, best kept secrets you find in the minor leagues that, for almost 25 years, you could go see a game at Rickwood Field, a regular season AA minor league game. And being there in 2010, which was marking the centennial, was extra special. And as I said, it was one of my very first road trips. I think it was the second one I ever did. And both were to Alabama. My first ever official road trip in 2010 was going to Mobile, Hank Aaron Stadium, where they relocated Hank Aaron's childhood home to the grounds of the stadium. And Hank Aaron was there, and Willie Mays was there, and Reggie Jackson was there, and Ozzie Smith was there, and Bob Feller was there, and that was an amazing event. And then the next trip I did was meeting Harmon Killebrew at the Rickwood Classic. So I had no idea what I was doing, but to have met Hall of Famers of that caliber and seen such historic settings and locations and backgrounds was just really amazing that year, and something I always remembered. I was able to visit Rickwood again in 2013 when I went to go see the opening of the new home of the Birmingham Barons, which they still play in today, Regents Field. And now to be back a decade later with this news coming, it is just awesome.
And what are some of the unique aspects of playing in that place? I mean, you were tweeting a thread earlier today about, walking through the park right now. It seems like they still have that old time scoreboard, hand operated scoreboard, with teams that were like representative of the 1940s, maybe, of what the Southern League was at the time. I'm sure that's going to change by the time San Francisco and St. Louis rolls through. But what are some unique aspects of that place?
Yeah, I mean, it was built in 1910 before the advent of night baseball. So the light towers, I don't know at what point those were added, but they're those huge metal, not portable light towers, but just towering over the fields, which give it a real old-fashioned feel. The scoreboard, as you mentioned, that still is set to MLB matchups of long ago. You can see the Brooklyn Dodgers on it. Southern League matchups, which I was corrected on Twitter today. It was actually the Southern Association for most of the time in which the Barons played. And in a shameful chapter of baseball history, the Southern Association basically went defunct after refusing to integrate. So that history is all tied up as well. The segregation going that the minor league team and the league that the Barons were part of chose to essentially disband in the early 60s rather than integrate. And the Birmingham Black Barons, of course, played there through the 60s as well. And that's something that people often overlook with the Negro Leagues, that even though Jackie Robinson made his debut in 1947, they lasted for another 15 years or so, because it's not like he opened the door, but it's not like it just everyone all of a sudden had an opportunity immediately. It took a long time for baseball to fully integrate. But you have the light towers, you have the classic scoreboard. The dugouts are like sunken into the playing field, so you can basically stand in the dugout, and you only have about maybe a foot or 2 feet with which to see over the lip of the dugout when you're
It's
standing.
actually dug out.
Yeah, it's and that is, I believe, is it the etymology? I forget which one means the roots of words and which one means insects, but I think it's the etymology.
Etymology, yeah. I think
Yeah,
entomology
it is.
is insects.
Yeah, how weird. Entomology is insects. Etymology is is word roots. But I think that's where the term dugout comes from. I mean, it was literally dug out of the playing field as a place for players to stand. And there's period advertisements on the walls as well, which is really cool. And right now, I imagine this will change once MLB really gets its operation set up, making all these improvements. It probably will be closed to the public for some time. But, on Friday, and probably today, you can just show up at Rickwood and walk in. It's open to the public every day and has been for a very long time, which is such a cool thing if you're in Birmingham to be able to go visit for free. And, there's a little gift shop. You can support the Friends of Rickwood that way. You can make a donation, but it's open to the public every day. And it's been a true labor of love to keep that ballpark, up to the standards that it's in today, as I mentioned. But you think about what the standards are for playing a Major League Baseball game with the padding on the walls, with the specifics of the playing field, with the specifics of the light. It will be it's an awesome thing, all these improvements that are going to be made, but there probably will be some concessions or hard decisions where it's between preserving those elements of the past and making it also playable for the modern day game in 2024 and beyond. So that will be interesting. But given the historic nature of the ballpark, I'm sure every effort will be made to make it so it continues. It still has that throwback charm. I mean, that goes without saying.
Well, Ben, it's not just the history of Birmingham baseball, but that area really plays host to so much of baseball's roots. And you're talking about the Southern Association and the Negro Southern Leagues and all of that. And I know you got a chance to have conversations with a lot of people down there about the history in that area, but especially in Birmingham, we're going to hear one of those conversations today.
Yeah, there's a museum. The Birmingham Barons now play at Regents Field in downtown Birmingham. There's a museum not attached to the ballpark, but located just beyond left field called the Negro Southern League Museum. And I stopped there on Thursday before going to see a game at Regents Field and spent some time with the director of the museum, Frank Adams Jr., who showed me around. And it's a small museum, but it's really well curated and has so much memorabilia and artifacts related to the Negro Southern League, of which the Black Barons were a part, very specific emphasis on the Black Barons, the Industrial League teams throughout Birmingham, because Birmingham was an industrial city. That's how it grew. So there's a lot of memorabilia, artifacts, and information related to all the industrial leagues. And it's such a cool thing to go to Birmingham. Not only can you go to Rickwood Field, you can go to this museum and learn about the history that way. So there's just so many little side trips in Birmingham that make it worth visiting. And so go to that museum, the Negro Southern League Museum, located right near Regents Field. And I sat down with as I said, the director of the museum, Frank Adams Jr., and talked to him about how the museum came about, plans for the future, what fans can see there now. And happy to share that with everybody right now.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Frank Adams, and what is your title with the museum?
I'm the director of the Negro Southern League Museum.
Director of the Negro Southern League Museum. And for those who don't know, what is the Negro Southern League Museum?
The Negro Southern League Museum is a baseball-themed museum here in Birmingham, Alabama, dedicated to recognizing, celebrating the accomplishments of Negro League players and Industrial League players through the experience of Birmingham.
And what was your path to becoming involved with the museum and being in the position you're in today?
So, as a lifelong baseball fan, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with the city of Birmingham's leadership. And when this role came open, I expressed some interest in the role as a baseball fan. And once I got here, I realized that I have one of the best jobs in America because of the fact that I can come to work every day and celebrate baseball. And not only celebrate baseball, but really talk about the development of baseball in America through the prism of Birmingham and how Birmingham impacted the national pastime. And
with the location, you're in the shadow of Regents Field, Birmingham's the home of the Birmingham Barons. What have been those partnerships like with the Barons themselves and other organizations throughout the city?
Well, I always tell people if they're looking for our museum, we're in left field at Regents Park. And that is extraordinary to be in the shadow of such a world-class facility and to have the partnership that we've had since 2015 on our opening with the Birmingham Barons. It's very, very helpful to be this close to the Barons' home stadium because we get to talk about the development of Negro League Baseball, but we also do it through the context of the Barons because the Birmingham Black Barons are synonymous with the Barons and also with the development of Negro League Baseball. So it's a wonderful partnership that we know will continue into the future. We look forward to celebrating their milestones and the history that the Birmingham Barons have with our museum and as well as with Rickwood Field.
And there are, obviously Negro League teams, Industrial League teams all over the country and so many stories to be told. But what about Birmingham specifically makes it such a rich town for this kind of history and the players who came through and all the stories that can be told?
Well, the Birmingham Black Barons was a legendary organization in the pantheon of Negro League Baseball, winning championships in 43, 44, 1948, producing some of the greatest players in Negro League history. as well as being sort of the way you really develop an organization inside out, and having a good farm system, and having players like Willie Mays and others come through Birmingham and play for the Barons, Frank Thomas and others from modern era, really speaks to the attractiveness that baseball has to this area. Birmingham has always been very, very supportive of baseball as a community, and the fact that we've had the largest number of retired Negro League players than any other community speaks to that once those players played here, they tended to stay here. And that was a very, very good thing for Birmingham, because the talent base was here. Baseball, being the top sport for a long time, had the best players in the Negro Leagues here. And that combined with the fact that the Barons have been all successful over the years is something that's very, very important in terms of saying to the baseball world that Birmingham is a very, very important area for baseball, and the fact that we have the oldest ballpark that's still in continuous operation in Rickwood Field lends itself to that.
And you mentioned a few big names just now, Willie Mays, chief among them. But what are some of the lesser-known stories or teams that you're now in a position to tell their stories that you think are most interesting or most in need of publicity?
I think Piper Davis was a very unique player amongst the pantheon of great players who played in Birmingham. Piper Davis was a gentleman who played in the industrial leagues initially and ended up playing for the Barons and becoming the manager of the Black Barons. And he was someone who was very influential on Willie Mays, a young Willie Mays who played on that 1948 championship team. He was about 16 years old. And Piper Davis was someone who was also a great teacher of the game. He taught a lot of ball players who came through Birmingham how to play the game, the speed of the game, the power, all of the finesse that you come to associate with Negro League teams. Piper Davis was in the middle of that. And he was an inspiration. Most of the players in our museum were great players, obviously, but they were also inspirations. They were people who young players inspired to be one day. They were very, very open and honest about the experiences they had as players and as leaders in their community. And so I think Piper Davis is someone who really deserves more thorough research, both as a player and as a leader in his community.
Yeah, and you have uniforms, contracts, all sorts of memorabilia related to Piper Davis and so many others. What was the process of acquiring, borrowing, just obtaining, and however you need to do it, such a great collection of material to make this museum really be able to display in vivid detail what these teams were like and what these players were like?
Well, the museum is a partnership between the City of Birmingham and the Center for Negro League Baseball Research. Dr. Layton Ravel is the executive director of the center, and his partnership with the City of Birmingham was critical because he has such a huge collection. He had a friend who played Negro League baseball, and after that friend passed away, he decided he wanted to start collecting memorabilia because there wasn't a lot that was organized. He found out that a lot of the players kept most of their memorabilia. Some of it was in attics, some of it was in basements, some had been given to family members when they passed on. But he took it upon himself to go around the country and collect the exhibits that we have here in the museum, and a lot more that we don't. Him being able to go to all these different communities in the Deep South and around the country and collecting these materials from families and former players was very, very important. There's a level of authenticity that we have here at the Negro Southern League Museum that is unique because the majority of the items that we have are authentic and that they are game used and game worn. And so that really takes you back in time. It lets you see what the players were using, the equipment they were using. It lets you see the type of uniforms they were wearing. So it's more than nostalgic. It really takes you back to that time. And that's a very, very authentic experience.
And obviously, baseball fans are going to be interested in visiting a museum like that. But besides that, maybe that broad and most obvious demographic, who are you trying to attract and bring to this museum in order to tell these stories?
So we are very, very focused on the baseball fan in general, but specifically younger fans as well. People who may not know the depth and breadth of Negro League Baseball and Industrial League Baseball and how important those two elements were to the development of the game, but also very focused on children, making sure that specifically local children, that they have a very strong tie to the national pastime, and that there are some legendary figures that played baseball here in Birmingham and went on and did some great things. And so the baseball fan in general will love this place. I think children absolutely adore it. And anyone who has just a little bit of knowledge about baseball can walk away with so much more knowledge when they walk out.
And when we were talking earlier, something you mentioned is being able to think of new exhibits and maybe cycle things out, bring in new things. You're at that stage of the museum now. When you think about the future, what are the things that get you most excited on that front?
Well, we're really excited about our upcoming Women in the Negro Leagues exhibit. We have a temporary exhibit now, but once that's installed, that will say to young women like the future Monet Davises that they have a place in the game, that baseball is a wonderful sport that's open to all, and that there were some really dynamic women who not only played the game, but they owned teams, and they were entrepreneurs, and they were leaders in their community. So that's a very important message to share with young women. Also, making sure that we try to celebrate the well-known baseball players, but also those who are less well-known, giving them an opportunity to share their story through the museum, because we really are a repository of that history that may not be told anywhere else. And so being able to rotate exhibits, working with the Center for Negro League Baseball Research, and making sure that we're really highlighting different players, not just from Birmingham, but across the country, is very, very important in terms of relevancy and making sure that our exhibits are as fresh as they can be.
You mentioned Piper Davis, but I guess to close out, how about one more? Who's as a Birmingham native yourself and someone so knowledgeable about the history, when you think of Birmingham baseball, who's another name that really jumps out to you?
The name that jumps out most quickly to me is Sam Hairston. Sam Hairston, who played in the Negro Leagues, was from West Birmingham, not far from where I grew up, who was not allowed to play in the major leagues, but ended up having a huge impact on the Barons, Birmingham Barons, over the years as the first African-American coach to join the staff. But the great story is the legacy that he left with his sons and his grandsons all going and playing in major leagues. And it's a great family. It's a family that it's a baseball family. It's a family that really demonstrates perseverance and overcoming some challenges and obstacles to be great at what you love. And I think that's a great American story. It's not just a baseball story.
Yeah, and that's what this museum is, American stories. And so if you're in Birmingham, you're near left field or Regents Field, then come and see it. I guess that's about all I had for you, unless there's anything you want to add, anything I missed.
No, I just look forward to all your listeners coming and visiting and walking away more informed about the great game we love.
Sure. Hopefully you get some more visitors as a result of this, and just in general, great stories to be told. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Hey, thank you.
What is natural? When you read natural flavors on a label, most people don't realize it's often not real food at all. Those hidden ingredients quietly work against how your body feels and functions over time. That's why Just Ingredients uses only real food ingredients, so you know exactly what you're putting in your body. Stop guessing. Start knowing at justingredients.us.
Well, that was Frank Adams Jr., the director of the Negro Southern League Museum. The Negro Southern League Museum, no plural on leagues there. Really enjoyed getting to know him and him taking the time to walk me through the museum and have that conversation. And just hours after I visited the museum, I was at Regents Field proper to see a game. The Birmingham Barons play the Tennessee Smokies. And talk about Rickwood Field and all its historic charm. Regents Field opened in 2013 and is, even 10 years later, still just one of the premier ballparks of the Southern League and all of minor league baseball. A gleaming, imposing downtown facility, really, really cool exterior signage with Birmingham all across the side in huge letters, in steel. harkening back to those industrial roots. So it was great to be back there for the first time in 10 years and see a game at Regents Field. And one of the things is I was there 10 years ago, and I found an article I wrote in which I was just talking about the surrounding landscape of downtown Birmingham at the time, and weed-strewn vacant lots and a team bus parked next to an abandoned building, and all these elements that were in place in 2013, and how I couldn't find a parking spot anywhere. And it was fun to dig up that article because 10 years later, there's been so much development around the area, and the skyline view at Regents Field is now filled with new buildings, a lot of them residential units that weren't there before. But it's always a debate, building new ballparks, the effect they have on downtown revitalization, the use of public money. And, I think it's something you have to look at on a case by case basis. But 10 years later, it's hard to compare it to 10 years ago and think that the ballpark didn't play a huge role in downtown, the Parkside district in Birmingham, as it's now called now, versus what it was 10 years ago. So it was really cool to be back. And also just to contrast the old and the new, Rickwood Field versus Regents Field, and the continuity of this team, the Barons, that date all the way back to the 19th century. The first team called the Barons was actually called the Coal Barons in 1885. So here in the year 2023, the Birmingham Barons are still going strong. So much history in the area, and so much history being made today at the ballpark. It's just a fun place to visit, and really a sneaky good baseball town is Birmingham.
And Ben, before we were talking about how the minor league game at Rickwood Field next year will be between the Birmingham Barons and the Montgomery Biscuits. Montgomery was another stop on your trip to the south. And you have another short clip here to present with a former Montgomery broadcaster, soon to be former Montgomery broadcaster, for the best of reasons. Take us through that.
Yeah, he's former now. We can get into the rest of my Biscuits experience next week, but I was at Riverwalk Stadium where Chris Adams-Wall is the Montgomery Biscuits play-by-play guy. And he had been with the Biscuits since 2015, put in a lot of time with the Biscuits. And he had just gotten the call-up, as it were, to the Tampa Bay Rays. He'll now be doing the pre- and post-game shows on the Tampa Bay's radio network. And he was finishing up his stint with the Biscuits when I was there. I talked to him on Friday. His last game with the Biscuits was on Sunday, and he's starting with the Rays the day this podcast will come out, Thursday, June 22nd. So it was interesting to talk to him. I did an interview with him. There's an article on MLB.com you can read about his time with the Biscuits and his thoughts on finally getting that major league call-up. But there's one little clip from that interview that I'd like to share where he talks about how he got the Biscuits job in the first place. It was through Joe Davis, who also was a former Biscuits announcer. And it's just funny how life works out. So here's a little clip from Chris Adams-Wall, and congratulations to him. He has moved on from Montgomery Biscuits to the Tampa Bay Rays.
And then it was in Montgomery that Joe Davis was worked here. And when you first got the job, was that make it a little more appealing, knowing that it could be a springboard in that manner?
It makes it a little bit more challenging because Joe, as we know, is pretty good at what he does. Called the World Series last year, took over for Vin Scully. I ended up at the Biscuits because of Joe Davis, though. So I was working as a production assistant at Fox Sports in Los Angeles, and I was working on a remote production crew working college football games. So every week I was rolling out of my bed in K-Town and near downtown Los Angeles, getting in an Uber, taking my American Airlines flight to Seattle, to Morgantown, West Virginia, to Austin, Texas, working that game, then coming home. My second year doing that job, the lead play-by-play announcer on our crew was Joe Davis. And I'm sitting there wondering, how am I the same age as this guy? I'm a little older than Joe, too, by a few months. I'm the lowest guy on the totem pole in this production crew. The broadcaster's younger than me. How is this guy so good? How is he where he is? And then I started to talk to Joe. We became good friends. And one day in particular, I remember we had a USC football game, and I was driving him from the 20th Century lot in Century City to downtown LA. And he asked me, so is this what you want to do? You want to do production? And I said, well, actually, I want to do what you do. And he said, well, then you can't wait around and continue to think about it. You got to act on it. I said, okay. Do you know anybody? He said, I do. And he gave me Aaron Vargas' number, and Aaron Vargas was Joe's number 2 his last season with the Biscuits. Aaron was the lead broadcaster with the Biscuits at the time in 2015, and he was looking for some help. And so then I became one of the first people, I think, in human history to move from Los Angeles, California to Montgomery, Alabama. It has been the best experience of my life, though. It couldn't have worked out better. I worked for free as a number 2, learned how to broadcast baseball, even though I had never broadcasted a baseball game in my life. I did some in college, right? Football, basketball, hockey, never baseball. But Joe gave me that chance, and so did Aaron. And so I feel extraordinarily grateful that happened. Aaron was a fantastic broadcaster. If Aaron were still around, first of all, he wouldn't be in Double-A. He'd be in the majors. But if he were still with the Biscuits, he probably would have been a shoo-in for the job that I got. So the fact that he left really set things up nicely for me. Had to wait a little while, but sometimes it's worth the wait.
Well, great stuff from Ben Hill. And as you can tell, great stuff to come as well as Ben's road trip continues. And hopefully the driving conditions will improve for Ben, because that sounded harrowing. But a huge thanks to Ben as always. And with that, we're going to talk some more on-field stuff as another midseason market corrections is coming to MILB prospects for MLB Pipeline. And one of our prospect gurus is one Samuel C. Dykstra. And Sam, we have had conversations throughout the year about top prospects, who has the most helium, who is climbing fastest, who is headed to their big league debut maybe a little bit sooner than we thought. And there are also guys who we've just kind of expected to do what they have done so far this season. But there is a really good conversation to be had about some names to be at the very top of that list. Who right now is in sort of that three-headed monster in the argument for a top prospect in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, Tyler. Just to set the scene a little bit more, we do market corrections every once in a while, just because, the more data we get, the more games that are played, we want the list to reflect what we know when we know it. But market corrections are not a complete top 100 revamp. We're not voting on the top 100 all over again. We're just moving guys who need to move. And in June, that's going to be a lot of guys. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a lot of movement. We try to move guys at least 10 spots up or down. If they're moving 3 or 4, that we don't generally touch them right now. And we revote on the entire top 15, which leads us into our conversation here of who is the number 1 overall prospect in baseball right now, because I do think it's a legitimate debate. Pre-update, right now it's Jackson Chourio from the Milwaukee Brewers, who longtime listeners of the show know I am a big Jackson Chourio fan, dating back to round about this time last year when he was moving up to single A, completely skipping over the Arizona Complex League, climbed 3 levels last year, showed really good power, even better speed, an ability to play a quality center field, and pretty much hit everywhere he went except for Double-A. Now he's 19, still at Double-A, not moving as quick anymore. Double-A has kind of been the point in which he's been challenged offensively. And, he's somebody who can certainly make an impact, but the bat isn't quite there for what we thought, which makes it a more open question of who is number 1 overall. If you've been following minor league baseball the last few months, you probably know the other 2 candidates. They are Elly De La Cruz, who is now in the majors with the Cincinnati Reds, and instantly providing a jolt to that team. I mean, Tyler, I'm sure you've seen this too. The Reds are calling themselves America's team. Which
Reds are a very fun team right now.
They are fun. I have no problem with it, because guess what? Something electric's going to happen. I mean, we talked plenty about what Elly brings to the table. It's elite speed. It's elite power. They're moving him between shortstop and third base right now. It's just, can he hit the ball enough? That's what it comes down to. He struck out 30% of the time everywhere he's been. That continues to be in the major leagues. But putting Elly De La Cruz in that lineup, and Joey Votto even talked about that the other day. He came back, which, how awesome was that home run?
Yeah, that was pretty dang cool. Joey Votto smashing a monster Joey Votto-esque homer in his return to the big leagues. Pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and then did an interview with SportsCenter and said, hey, listen, Elly De La Cruz is kind of becoming the heart and soul of this team. He's providing a jolt that we need, and that city needs, to be honest with you. At least the baseball loving part of that city needs, because it seems like they were in the doldrums just back in April. Now, this NL Central being as wide open as it is, they have a seat at the table. Not only that, they're leading the division as we talk here on Tuesday. So Elly De La Cruz definitely in that conversation. It's just, can he hit enough? I mean, when he puts bat on ball, it's loud. It's incredibly loud. He already has the best exit velocity on this Reds team. and he hasn't been there that long. We know that. But striking out 30% of the time is not sustainable. I mean, it is like it's something he can sustain, but it's worrisome. It's how you end up being just an above average bat instead of a plus bat. It's how you go from a solid player to an all-star. If he can cut that down, and he showed part of that in AAA, but now it's starting to creep up again. And that's why we have serious questions about him. That's why he's not number one with a bullet, even if you watch Major League Baseball the last few weeks and think, how is this guy not the top 100 prospect or number one overall? The other guy is Orioles shortstop Jackson Holliday, who was the number one pick just last year, has already climbed to high A at such a young age. He's 19 too, just like Jackson Chourio. He's legitimately hit everywhere he's gone. As we're talking here on Tuesday, he has a 330 average for the season, averages and everything. There was a time where he led the minor leagues in OPS. He's got that 3-4-5 slash line that you love to see at high A, and that's been sustained over 44 games. So he's, he's certainly hitting there. It's been sustainable. He plays a solid shortstop, much more likely to stick there than I think Elly De La Cruz, even though Elly De La Cruz has the better arm. I just think Jackson Holliday is a guy you keep it short as long as you can. Even though I've always said with Elly, I want him to be a shortstop as long as he can. He's bouncing back. I don't think that's going to happen with Holliday. But it's how do you weigh like a guy who's in the major leagues right now and who has top of the line tools, but is a little less sharp on the biggest tool that I think matters to a hitting prospect, which is the hit tool, versus Jackson Holliday, who is very easily projectable to be a potential 300 hitter someday and is good with power and is good with speed, even if he's not reaching those upper limits like Elly De La Cruz. Tyler, if you were weighing these things, how would you look at it?
It's always helpful when I hit the unmute button. All right, give me the breakdown of how you want my weighed opinion on this.
Well, just how do you look at it? Do you look at somebody who is legitimately top of the line?
Yeah.
In multiple categories.
Yeah.
Elly De La Cruz, he calls himself the fastest man in the world.
Right.
Again, top exit velos on the Reds already.
Right.
But if he's going to strike out 30 to 35% of the time,
right,
he might end up being closer to a league average bat.
So am I trusting more his talent and his ability to adjust, or the body of work so far? Which am I weighing?
Yeah, kind of. I just think with Jackson Holliday, when you know he's going to hit.
Right. Right.
How much weight does that carry with you?
I think in a conversation like this, the thing that weighs most for me is the level at which we've already seen the production. Jackson Holliday obviously is a tremendous player and has been fantastic throughout his very brief pro career. He's the first overall pick last year, as everybody has known about him since he got into that Orioles system. He's 19. He's doing it at high A. For Elly De La Cruz to be doing this at every stop so far and now doing it in such an electrifying way at the major league level, like Elly De La Cruz is hitting 271 with a 769 OPS. He's got one big league homer. That's all very good. He is striking out a lot. And yet, look at the conversations that we're having about him right now. Like, I think his ability to impact games at the big league level, that carries me to placing him higher because we know that all of that has already translated to those upper levels and now at the big league level than where Jackson Holliday is. And that's certainly no knock on Jackson Holliday. It's just he's so much earlier in his career and we have not yet seen him at one of the huge separation levels. Now, obviously, low A and high A, single A and class A advanced, all the terminology that we've used over the last several years to describe those, that is one separating jump. But when we get to double A with Jackson Holliday is when I'm going to be most interested to watch and see what he does. And now granted, he's got a 952 OPS in 44 games at high A this year. So I don't think he's going to struggle all that much. But with what Elly De La Cruz has already accomplished this year, he would get my vote for that, for knowing this is a skill set that is playable at the major league level, even if there are still adjustments that he needs to make. That's how I'm evaluating it.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I mean, the other end of the spectrum is like,
you were giving me a good poker face, by the way. I just want to point out, Sam was looking into the screen. I was thinking, does he think I'm an idiot right now? But that was
no,
good.
I don't. I think this is a legitimate
tip
debate.
Your hand.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I'm not trying to tip my hand. I know how this is going to end up, and I'm trying not to tip my hand in any way. Because that's the thing is that the people who come up with the top 100, me, Jim Callis, Jonathan Mayo, we all have our own votes. We all have our own feelings about this, and we put them all together and we mix them in and we get some industry feedback. And, that's what happens with the top 100. So I can have my feelings about this any which way, and I'm not going to give them to you because it might tip our hand. But at the point of the matter is it's a somewhat of a consensus. So even if I say how I feel, it's not necessarily how things are going to end up. That being said, I think the other thing that you have to kind of weigh in this is like age relative to where they've been. I totally agree with you. I mean, there's a reason why when we do our top 100 lists, you can kind of tell it's usually leaning towards guys with AA, AAA experience, or in the case like last year, when we had Gunnar Henderson, or the beginning of this year, I should say, Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll are number 1 and 2 because they made the major leagues. We'd seen what they had done in the majors. That carries a lot of weight. I totally agree with you on that. But to Jackson Holliday and Jackson Churio's case, these guys are only teenagers still. Like they haven't had those chances yet, and they performed at such a young age. They're performing against guys who are 4 or 5 years their senior, and they're doing this well. I mean, that's easy to project too. What happens when they meet the league average for age and they have all that wealth of experience? I mean, by the time that happens, they're probably going to be 3-4 year major leaguers, which is insane to think about. I try to keep that thought process going with other guys too. You look at like Wander Franco. He was the number 1 overall prospect for a time, came up to the major leagues. I wouldn't call him an 80 hitter anymore, but where he is now is really good, like a really good player. And he's still significantly young.
Yeah.
Like there was a stretch there where he was one of the 10 youngest, or he was younger than like a lot of young top prospects. And that's still the case now.
Yeah. After he'd already graduated.
After he graduated
for
like
only
2
22.
years.
You know, like
right.
He's still at a level developmentally or age wise where if a guy was in AA, you would think like, oh yeah, it's an acceptable time frame for him to spend at the AA level. And he's been in the big league since 2021.
Right. So I think Jackson Holliday and Jackson Churio have that on their side, right? They have time. That being said, it becomes a lot easier to bet on a guy when he has made the major leagues, and we've seen how those tools play. It's a fascinating debate. We are going to release our market corrections in the top 100 early next week. Keep them peeled on that on MLB Pipeline. I'll be tweeting them out. Jim Callis will be tweeting them out. Jonathan Mayo, and I embrace the debate as the saying goes. I'm sure people are going to disagree no matter how we come down on that. And I love that for baseball. I love that there's not a clear cut number 1, and then we can have those debates because that's part of what makes prospect ranking so fun.
So keep your eyes peeled at MLB Pipeline for the updated top 100, which is coming. And we were discussing a little while ago, it might be the last top 100 market corrections before the big re-rank coming up after the draft and all that, right?
Yes. Yeah. We normally do our re-rank around mid-August, which will be after the draft, after the trade deadline, which is such a weird time because there will be guys traded. There's so much movement around that time. I've talked to farm directors who have all said, this is the most hectic time in the year. Why are you calling me now? I'm like, it's the way it works. I'm sorry. But this will probably be the last one before then, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, so much going on between now and then anyways.
So, like we said, keep watching, see where your favorite team's favorite prospect lands on the re-rank coming up in MLB Pipeline. We'll step aside for a timeout. Josh Jackson stops by the show, and we're back to wrap it up on the other side.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you another thrilling edition of Ghosts of the Miners. Now, here's your correspondent and host, Joshua Jackson.
Welcome back to Ghosts of the Miners, in which all of you out there in Radioland must identify the legitimate historical ball club hiding amidst the fraudulent pair. One once played all the livelong day. The others never even got up in the morning, or any other time. In the last segment, I asked you which of the following minor league baseball teams did at one point exist. A, the Leadville Leadheads. B, the Silver Spring Silverhawks. C, the Goldsboro Goldbugs. You're rich in knowledge if you picked C, the Goldsboro Goldbugs, who were first unearthed for a lone season in the Eastern Carolina League of 1929 before being dug up for 9 non-consecutive seasons in the Coastal Plain League of the 1930s and 40s. At least, that's what's in the books officially. In reality, the Wayne County, North Carolina town had minors teams of various names stretching back a good 2 decades before that, and there's concrete evidence that at least the 1928 one, known in official records now as the Goldsboro Manufacturers, were sometimes also referred to as the Goldbugs. Some sources of our day speculate that the Goldbugs moniker was inspired by the golden tortoise beetle, aka the Goldbug, which does occur in North Carolina. But the more popular usage of the term goldbug in the late 19th and early 20th centuries meant people who were mad for the search for gold, or economists or politicians who were adamant about the monetary system of the United States being on the gold standard. The gold in Goldsboro, though, came not from any type of precious metal, but from the name of Matthew Goldsboro, the 19th century railroad engineer whose tracks have been well covered elsewhere. Speaking of elsewhere, the once home of the Goldbugs is under no circumstances to be confused with Goldsboro, Pennsylvania, a burg named for Matthew Goldsboro's fellow 19th century engineer and distant cousin, John Goldsboro. So, go figure, the Goldbugs were anything but a train wreck, coming in second place in the ECL of 29 before being derailed by the Depression-related collapse of the circuit before the spring of 1930. But Goldsboro dusted itself off to reveal a shiny new Goldbugs team to add some flavor to the Coastal Plain League from 37 to 41, then again for 4 seasons following the war. Not even the toughest critic could pan the Goldbugs sequels, as the club made the playoffs 4 times over those 9 seasons, including twice in 1946 and 1948 under manager Bill Herring. Nothing fishy about that. In 1950, though, the Goldsboro Club struck it rich with an affiliation with the St. Louis organization of the National League, becoming the Goldsboro Cardinals. And that's how the Goldbugs were for the birds. Now, on to the question for next time. Which of these teams believed more was merrier in the minors of yesteryear? A, the Septet Hills Seven Tops. B, the Kingsport Johnson City Bristol Three Timers. C, the Leaksville Draper Spray Triplets. Want to know the answer? Say it again. Or tune into the next Ghost of the Minors. But for now, you'll have to excuse me. My producer Ben Hill is reciting an Allen Ginsberg poem, and I've got to beat it.
Getting set to wrap up this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. But before we do, as always, we take you through the promo to watch this week and games to watch this week as well. Ben, on the promotional front, who is most exciting you this weekend?
Who would that be? It would be the Tulsa Drillers, who on June 22nd all the way through June 25th, that would be Thursday through Sunday for those keeping score at home, they are having their annual 918 weekend, 918 weekend, which is Tulsa's area code. And for all those 4 games, they are playing as the Tulsa Sound, paying tribute to the city's musical legacy. And in the press release, they describe it as the iconic musical style that originated in Tulsa during the second half of the 20th century. The unique Tulsa sound featured a mix of blues rock, country, rock and roll, and swamp pop. The early pioneers of the Tulsa sound, including legends like Leon Russell, J.J. Cale, Roger Tillison, and Elvin Bishop. And so this Tulsa sound identity features a primary logo that's featured on the hats with a baseball who looks like Leon Russell. Who is one of the main people behind that Tulsa sound. He's a great musician. I saw a great documentary about him a few years ago, I think directed by Les Blank. And so this logo, he's got the top hat, he's got the sunglasses, he's got the goatee and the long kind of Fu Manchu mustache, the long hair. So he's a real funky looking dude, very rock and roll, very swamp rock looking. And looking forward to seeing what that looks like on the playing field. The Tulsa Drillers playing as the Tulsa Sound
with a Leon Russell derived logo, June 22nd through June 25th.
That does sound very cool. Sam, what about on the field? What prospects you got an eye on this week/weekend?
Yeah, I wish I had something that was Swamp Rock related, because that just
That would be
seems
pretty cool.
very pleasing to say.
There used to be a Swamp Rats team, didn't there? At one time, wasn't there a minor league team named the Swamp Rats or Swamp Dragons? Wasn't Shreveport? Didn't they have the Swamp Dragon?
Yeah, the Shreveport Swamp Dragons in the Texas League. I forget, they played up into the early 2000s. I forget where they relocated.
Swamp. That's the new term. Swamp Dragons. Sam, on field, what do you got?
Yeah, so this one may have become a little less interesting, but actually, in my eyes, it became even more interesting, and that's Columbus against Indianapolis. And I say maybe that was a little less interesting because, in case you haven't heard, 2021 #1 overall pick Henry Davis got called up to the Pirates this week. They started him in right field, which is notable considering he was drafted as a catcher, developed mostly as a catcher, and then the closer he got to Pittsburgh, the more they moved him around the field. They moved him to right. I think part of the reason why that is because they still have Endy Rodriguez, who is a much more athletic catcher, a better defensive prospect. He's still in Indianapolis, so you can catch him on Saturday. I'm really interested to see what they do with him, because he's somebody who moved around a lot too. He got some time at second base. He's got some time in the outfield before. He will be going up against Columbus on Saturday. Columbus has a very loaded lineup themselves. George Valera, Brian Rocchio are in that lineup. They've called up Bo Naylor too, so this is another team that is without its star catcher. But Quinn Priester is likely to be the starter for Indianapolis, so you're likely to have Quinn Priester working with Endy Rodriguez. That NL Central is wide open, right? Like we're seeing that right now. The Cincinnati Reds leading that division as of when we're talking here on Tuesday, which is so nuts. Pittsburgh's kind of right in the middle of that fight. There's a chance that Endy Rodriguez and Quinn Priester, every start they make, is an audition for Pittsburgh. They've shown a willingness to call up a guy like Henry Davis if they think they can help. So if these guys really show that they can be consistent at Indianapolis, a call to the Steel City can't be far off. Tyler, what are you looking at?
So I've got my eyes, oddly enough, on the top Sam Dykstra prospect in baseball. And that is actually the top overall prospect in baseball, Jackson Chourio, who is with AA Biloxi, of course, and not a coincidence that Ben is there right now. And some of the most exciting talent on the field is there right now. We've got all the on and off field talent in Biloxi currently. But Jackson Chourio, the numbers this year have been a little bit up and down, and he is still so young for that level. Jackson Chourio is still just 19 years old, and he only turned 19 back in March. But for a 19-year-old in AA, he's still got an OPS over 700. He has been doing a lot of things right. He is also potentially this weekend going to be splitting a field with Noelvi Marte, the Reds prospect, who has been battling injuries and sort of dealing with his own growing pains of sorts this year. There's the potential that we could see those two guys sharing a field. It was a mild hamstring strain most recently for Noelvi Marte, who has been out of action for most of the month now. He did play last night in a rehab game, but it still remains to be seen when he will actually return from the Arizona Complex League to AA Chattanooga. But Biloxi is worth the free price of viewing admission, and so is Chattanooga. They've got Reese Hines as well, who's been red hot this year. He's the number 16 Reds prospect. And that game and that series on MILB.TV this weekend. Free game is coming up Sunday evening at 6:05 p.m. Eastern time. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. Next episode, I'm going to be talking to you dudes from across the pond. I don't know if we mentioned this last week, but I'm headed to London tomorrow as part of the London series festivities, Cubs and Cardinals. I'll be in Trafalgar Square hosting Home Run Derby X. So, when I get to launch some virtual bombs on the screen in Trafalgar Square, I hope somebody is there with a good enough camera.
Yeah, and of the many dingers you're going to hit, just dedicate one or two to Ben or
okay.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
I can do that. Be like, this one's for you, Dykstra, and then I'll pop it straight up into the top of the virtual cage.
Oh, well, just as it's flying,
Yeah,
as
that's
it's
true.
going.
I have to wait for the path.
Yeah, let's not call our shots and then dedicate it to me, huh?
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, I'll say one for you and one for Ben.
Well, yeah, and travel safe, and we all can't wait until you get back Back.
Oh, man. For Josh Jackson, Sam Dykstra, and Ben Hill, big thanks to our guests for this week. And my name is Tyler Vaughn. We'll catch you next week.